Welcome back to the Rooted in Reliability podcast. We are here at the leading reliability conference in Clearwater Beach, Florida, talking to some of the presenters that have been presenting today. We're going to hear a little bit about the stories that they've told and what they've learned. We're going to get started with some quick introductions. I've got with me Mark and John, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about their presentation. John, you want to go first?
Excellent. Thank you, Shon. John Lazar, worked for E&J Gallo Winery. Been there for about 18 years. Worked in various roles from corporate engineering to operations to my latest role in developing a maintenance asset management program for Gallo as a whole. Mark?
Very good, Mark.
Hey, I'm Mark Dunkel. Been in reliability and predictive maintenance for 2 months now, so a very long time. Worked for Gallo for about 18 years in different engineering roles, from corporate to plant engineering to controls and MES systems.
Very good, very good. Well, good to have both of you here. We'll get started with a little bit about the conference. I'd love to hear what you guys think so far, but it's been a great conference for me. I think we've got to interact with a lot of folks, meet some folks that are going through some of the same problems that we are. What about you guys? John, what would you say?
It was great. This morning's dialogue with Admiral Burke, I think it was really good, enlightening about how we were transitioning our workforce and what we want to do to prepare for the new workforce, the next generation. Of course, I can't forget about yesterday's discussion when you and Brian talked about leadership and how leadership should react, and did a lot of reflection. Even though we've been in this role for a long time, you still presented to us some new things to go learn. So that was great.
It's awesome. Yeah, I think especially when we talk about leadership, it's you kind of have to put the mirror up at the end of the day, right? And sometimes I don't always like what I see. That's right. It's face for radio, right? So, Mark, what about you? What have you seen or heard so far that was interesting?
I think the most interesting thing is the side conversations. I know it's been brought up a few times, but today we missed a presentation that I wanted to see because we were having a side conversation just about what other companies were doing and how they implemented predictive maintenance. So it's being able to talk to other people that have gone through the same things we have is great because we can take what they've done and steal it and then hopefully apply it and apply it a little faster.
Yeah, learn from their success, but also a lot of them here will tell you their failures too, which can be just as beneficial.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, good. Well, let's talk about y'all's presentation a little bit. I enjoyed it. It was great to hear about your continued journey. It's a journey you've been on for a while, and so would love to kind of walk through some of the things you talked about in there. We'll talk about as much of it as you want to dive into, but let's get started. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what's the scope. What does it look like?
Well, fair enough. I could take hours talking about this, Shon. I think it's fascinating to me. As you know, I don't have a lot of maintenance background, but as I got into this arena and this space and working with you, I learned a lot. I will tell you, it's a journey, as you've mentioned to me, and we started this about 4 years ago, and really implementing a structure at the beginning, understanding what it takes to build an asset management program. And more importantly is the people side of this thing, is how do each individual, not individual, but maybe the teams, whether it's reliability engineering or work management or planning or storeroom or the mechanics, every role has a key role. And I will always reiterate what you taught me very well about planning. Work management is really key to this thing, to making it happen. I thought it was a personal passion of yours, but it really showed, no, it's not just a passion, but it's a reality. It's key to making asset management work with how you plan and how you schedule and how you coordinate all the work that needs to happen. Everything else is inputs into it, but work management and the execution team make this thing happen. So that's been our journey, and I think we've had some really great results in a couple of sites. We've done it across 5 sites, as you know. And 2 of our sites, one was really at the low end of the maturity for work asset management. One wasn't. But both of those sites, which was heavy seasonality type facilities, have really paid dividends to their organization, and their plant managers and their directors all realize the benefits of what we're doing, and it's a huge I think input from what you and your team have taught us, and that's the one thing I really appreciate about our journey is you and Erudicia, I'll say, really truly enabled us to become our own and not really become you, but become ourselves through your lens. That was good.
It was definitely an enjoyable implementation, and it seems that you guys have carried it on. So tell us a little bit about, what's next? What are you working on right now?
So what's next is something that maybe you've heard. We've gone through leadership change. As any organization goes through, there's a certain level of leadership changes, and we've had our share of leadership change and trying to get new leaders on board to understand what we're doing. So our next step is making sure that they understand our approach to what we do this. In addition to as you know, Gallo is always constantly growing, and I mentioned today we just partnered with a beer company. I forgot the name. Montucky is the name of it, and we're now going from wine to beer. So go figure. But we've got a couple of other plants in the East Coast that we're going to start to implement our asset management program with them as well, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm also looking forward to some help because it does take a big lift, and I think we're still early in our journey to become fully self-sustained, where I will need your help, Shon.
Yeah, well, I look forward to hearing more about it. So let's switch over and let Mark talk a little bit because I know he wants to talk a lot. So Mark, it's
my favorite.
It's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you came over from the engineering side, and while I remember you getting involved a little bit early but now you're full-fledged in. What's some of the first things you've noticed as being part of the reliability program?
Oh, geez. I don't think I've changed my lens in the last 4 years working for John. But the biggest thing is the battles that you have with people's different perspectives and different priorities, right? There is an initiative to help drive some standard to how we do maintenance and hopefully improve it. But having to deal with people's own opinions about what they want to do and try to remove the emotion from it is probably the biggest thing. We used to laugh that I was world-class maintenance adjacent for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer adjacent, so now I'm in it.
Yeah.
But, the realities of having to try to convince people that it's okay to have a feeling that we want to change something or do something, but let's look at the data and let the data drive the decision. So dealing with that people side of thing it was a little more surprising than I expected. I knew it was there. It's true with everything you do, with project management or whatever, but it's even larger on the maintenance side.
Yeah, I think it definitely is interesting. The people side, you get to deal with folks who have been doing it the same way for many years, but you also had a big influx of new people into the organization, and then all companies are dealing with the turnover situation. So you've got a lot of different people in a lot of different places, if you will. So I'm sure it's a challenge from that perspective. One thing I will say that I've noticed about you that I really enjoy seeing is you do bring the data.
I do like data.
That's right. I chuckled today when you started calculating the maintenance cost for emergency versus planned repairs, and I'm sure we could probably have a dialogue about that here as well.
And that's okay. We have to be conservative to start.
That's right. But no, I love that. I love that, because I think a lot of the metrics that are used out there today, honestly, I'm not sure that someone really has reviewed the data. So it was cool to hear you talk about that. But so with that said, let's talk about the people side for a few minutes. What's hard? What's hard about the people side? Why is it so much worse than the technical solution?
Yes, it is hard.
Yeah, it absolutely is. What do you think, John? What makes it so tough?
Oh, it ain't tough. It's easy.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Having a vision for it is key, and then trying to get people to understand what I will say is the true north of what we're trying to do is key. If you're able to define true north and you're able to say that's where we're going, the direction we're going, does make it a little simpler. But then, in order for people to buy in, one, you've got to have a good plan and good system and good process in place to educate, so they could see the steps needed to get to the true north. And lastly, but not least, but I will say is there's also a leap of faith, because everything we're doing should prevent failures, should improve reliability through prevention of failures. And that's the hard part, is prevention doesn't automatically generate immediate rewards. You're building a program to prevent, which doesn't necessarily mean I see my efforts today, but they'll see their efforts in the future. And there's got to be a leap of faith for that future.
We jokingly call that the I believe button, right? And I think I've heard a lot of people here at the conference talk about that today as well. You know, how do you sell those little successes early on until that PM that you refined or that predictive maintenance strategy that you've put in place actually starts to show the results going forward? Have you guys had any certain areas that have been really successful that have allowed you to kind of win some of that credibility?
Without a doubt. We implemented our asset management program across 5 sites on the West Coast before we go to the East Coast. And if you recall, we looked at our 2 wineries, and they're very seasonal approaches. And I will say around July, August timeframe through October, it's our crunch season. It's 24/7, all hands on deck. And when we did the review with that team, Fresno, I will say, was probably the least mature with programs and processes and implementation. Fast forward to last year, when we started looking at the evolution from 2021, 22, 23, Fresno and Livingston are 2 harvest sites, which is the most difficult sites to really implement planned work, especially during harvest season, became our leading sites to do more planned work during harvest. Last year in Livingston, we did more than 1,100 planned work, but in reality is also, more importantly, we did about 800 or 900 less unplanned work last year than previous. Fresno, very similar story. Why we also feel comfortable those numbers are accurate, because we pull it all out of SAP, the engagement of the mechanics putting into work into SAP. We had about 70 to 75% of our work identified in SAP. And if you think about breaks and lunches, 75% is almost our 100%.
Absolutely.
So you feel comfortable that the data is in SAP, and what you're getting out of SAP told us a good story about Livingston and Fresno.
That's really good to hear. So one of your successes with them, what you're saying is there was a lot of work that was done within those facilities on a corrective maintenance basis, but that also turned around, and on the flip side, you could see that in a reduction in reactive maintenance.
Absolutely.
Very good, which we know has a huge savings, right, Mark?
Way more than 30%.
Way more than 30%. All right, very good, very good.
I will tell you one more. Besides the savings itself, from a team member perspective, we always say, you know, we had a review with those teams, and when you get mechanics telling you, I used to come to the plant with knots in my stomach during harvest. The last harvest in 2023, they were so calm, cool. They said they were comfortable coming into. There was nothing anxious. There was no anxiety. There was no, oh my God, what's that latest fire we got to go fight? That alone meant the world to everybody. That one mechanic, that 2 mechanics that said those same similar things. So we see that the system works if we follow it.
Absolutely. So that stress level drops within the organization, which I think also probably allows cooler and calmer heads to prevail in some of those other situations as they go forward.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. Well, what would you tell other people? What would you tell folks that are starting this journey right now? And I'll hit both of you, but I'll start with John. You know, what is some key advice that would really, help?
I think one, if you're part of the leading this strategy or this initiative or trying to implement something, you have to believe in it. And that's one thing I did. And I will say, Shon, to you and to your team, you allowed me to believe in it. You showed me the way to believe in it. So that's one. I got to believe in it to be able to share our vision of how do we get there. Two, really the implementing or defining a system or process that we want to go for. Not everything's going to be the same. Not every site is going to be this exactly same. But if we have a foundation built, and the foundation is built by a cross-functional team called focus teams, I think that helps get the people aligned on here's how our approach, and really looking at, are we adopting it? It's not what I will call the hammer approach to get people to do it. It really is adopting. Are they adopting? And you always are in a constant mode of coaching and teaching why that's important, why that's really, how's the benefit to this? And as people start doing it and they start seeing the benefits, it's an avalanche. They see one, then they see two, then they see three, and they say, oh, we've adopted it. So my two things to people is, one, self-belief, and spend time with team members and other leaders coaching and teaching, because they've got to learn. Not everybody's on the same page as you, and you've got to teach them to understand how the process works.
Well, I got to definitely piggyback off of something you said there, because I've had 2 or 3 people call me in the last couple weeks. In fact, one I talked to on the way down here to the conference, and we were talking about that whole point. You know, when you're doing a multi-site implementation, what is standardized, right? And one of the things that I think, you know, one of the guys said to me, and it kind of made me laugh a little. He said, you know, I've read a bunch of books on this, and they all say it has to be rigidly standardized. And I said, from a people and change standpoint, that'll never work. They don't have any ownership, right? So, you know, one of the ways that we have addressed that in the past is color coding, and you know, we'll color code the business processes. We've taken the time to map them and get them cleaned up and ready to go. But now, I'll color code things blue that have to be standardized. That's the way the CMMS works, or that's the way we're reporting metrics, right? But I'll also color some things green, and those things that are green, they can then go and make edits and changes, make it fit within their organization. You know, they may have different people, and I don't mean different people, I mean different roles. They may have more of one type. They may be union versus non-union. There's all kinds of things that could be different. And they can make those little changes on the green side while sticking with the core process that's in the blue.
Absolutely. I just heard about the green and
green and blue. Yeah,
green and blue.
Yes.
I'm going to adopt this now, because we are struggling with, you know, what, especially when we have leadership change within our planning world or RME world or storm or maintenance. What is their leeway of what they can do at the site level? Sometimes we become rigid, saying thou shalt follow this process as defined to the extent, but you got to give them leeway. So I think that the whole green-blue allows us the flexibility to understand what is plant level change is okay, what is not, what is more of a governance piece, which was
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it definitely does help, because they have to own the processes too, right? And there's science to back it up as well. There's a study out of Tufts University. It's an older study, but it was originally done at the end of the Vietnam War, and what they were talking about there was they were studying success, and they were studying where children were being fed through aid, and where they were really successful and where they failed. And they started to realize that you couldn't rely on aid, it would go away. So they had to be able to find natural, normal, local resources that they could win with. So they studied the healthy children, and what they found specifically in that study was that the healthy children were eating a lot of soft-shelled crabs. They were also eating a lot of sweet potato leaves, and that was giving them the nutrients they needed, so that's why they were healthy. So that was the positive deviance. But being a lot like a lot of us, they immediately said, okay, we're going to take that to the next city and the next city and the next city, and they failed.
To standardize it.
They failed. They standardized it, and it absolutely failed. So what they realized was there has to be a certain level of ownership in each of those sites, and that's been a big eye-opener for me, because in one hand, we all want to standardize, and we think that's exactly what we need to do, and we do to a point, but we have to let, I think, these sites own some of the solution. Well, it looks like it's about time for happy hour, so we better wrap this up. I hear the volume
it's getting
coming up
noisy,
behind
yep.
us. Yeah, absolutely. So I really appreciate you guys joining us on the podcast. It's been fun kind of chatting with you guys. Love to do it again if you're willing to do it
Absolutely,
in the future.
Shon. I gotta say, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to or not, but I gotta tell you, the last 3 years, and I know you've sort of let me on my own this year, but the last 3 years for me have been great working with you, and I want to continue because you've been one of the hell of a coach for me and mentor for me, and I've always told them, whenever I'm in a valley of despair, there's one person I can call to get me out. That's you, Shon.
I
So
appreciate
thank
it,
you.
John. I really do. It has been fun, and we've had some good exchanges
we
over
have.
the years.
we
and
have.
it is. We've learned, I think, a lot. Both of us has if we've gone through those processes. So, well, again, thank you guys
you.
for joining us, and I hope to see you again.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.